Welcome to CKLA Unit 5, Lesson 17. We're going to review the different kinds of verbs, and we're going to change the tense of action verbs. So we're going to look at changing them from present and past. You've learned about verbs. Remember the two kinds of verbs that you learned about? You learned about action verbs and to be verbs. Now, action verbs are verbs that you can see. So like if someone's sleeping, running, those are easy to identify. And then those to be verbs are verbs like am, is, are present tense of being something. And then am, is, are, was, and were are your past tense of to be. Now let's look at some sentences and identify the verb. We stopped at the gas station. What is your verb or predicate in the sentence? Stopped. They looked in the dictionary. What's the action here? Looked. I have a cold. Now this is a form of be, so you can't really, like if you have something that is an action, but you can't really see it like you can other actions. So that's a form of being something. And your verb here is have. She wrote a letter on stationery. What's your verb or predicate? Wrote. He is the apple of my eye. Now you can't really see this one because it's a form of be, but the verb is. Actions speak louder than words. Now, what do you actually see happening here? What's your action, your verb? Not the word action. That's kind of tricky. The actual action here is speak. Actions speak. So your actions are speaking louder than words. Now we can change the form of a verb to indicate whether something is happening now, happening in the past, or will happen in the future. For example, look at walk. I walk. This is a present tense verb, and we can change it to walked to make it past tense. I will walk makes it future tense. Today you will focus on verbs in these two tenses, present and past. The past tense means something that has already happened. It is over and done. And the present tense means something is currently taking place. I paint today. It's happening right now, right? It's present tense. Yesterday, I painted. Now, this is your past tense. This is something that's already happened. Most verbs change to the past tense by adding ed to the end of the word. We've done this quite a bit, adding that ed. Now look at lesson 17.1, page 91 in your packet. And you're going to see here that you are, you're going to change, or you're really going to look at these words in past tense. And we're going to edit the verb to make them past tense forms. So look at the first section. Most verbs can be changed from the present to the past by adding the suffix ed. So I want you to take some time and go ahead and change the verb, like the two examples, and make it the past tense verb. I start, I started. I want, I wanted. I need, what are you going to change this one to? I needed. Add an ed to the end of need. I paint. Change it to I painted. Add your ed. And I plant would change to planted. Good. Now look at the next section. Sometimes the ed suffix is sounded ed, as it is in the words that you just made. But sometimes you only hear just the d. So these are words you're going to add ed, but you're only going to add the d sound to the end of it. Like call, called. Open, opened. So you're adding an ed, but you're only saying d. I follow, I followed. I show, I showed. I seem, I seemed. I yell, I yelled. Okay, turn it over on the back. And now we're going to look at words that when you add the ed, you hear the t sound. We ask, we asked. We pass, we passed. We pick. Now you're going to add an ed, but you're only going to make the t sound. We picked. We finish, we finished. We jump, we jumped. We pack, we packed. Now the bottom, let's determine if it's going to say ed, d, or t. Played. You only hear d, so you're going to mark that middle sound. Sprinted. You hear both sounds, right? Ed. So we're going to color in the first one. Rushed. Rushed. You're making that t sound, so you're going to bubble in the T sound. Field. Field. You're making that d sound, so you're going to fill in the middle one, the d sound. Shouted. Shouted. Here you hear both sounds, right? The E and the D. So we're going to mark that first one, shouted, ed. And number 6, watched. Watched. You're only hearing the d, so you're going to mark that middle sound. D. Now all of these verbs are in the past tense, right? Because ed is your past tense, no matter what sound it makes. Okay, you're going to keep this sheet at home. It was just for some extra practice. Now, but you do have 17.3, which is page, it's page 95. You're going to be reading the words aloud and then putting them in alphabetical order. So it's just a review of that ABC order that we have talked about. So you've got the same thing on front and back. You're going to read the words and put them in ABC order. No, excuse me, the back, you're going to be, it's a short story. You're just going to practice reading with a family member. So just read through it. Make sure you're reading it fluently. Make sure you're reading those words correctly. And you don't have to do anything to the back. Just practice reading it. Okay, so let's review. We reviewed different kinds of verbs, and then we changed the tense of action verbs. Now, something I do want you to think about that we're going to look at tomorrow. We've talked about a lot of stories with Sir Gus. Now, I want you to start thinking about how, if we change the ending to some of these stories, how would it change the comprehension of our stories? So, like, if you have a library book or a book at home that you can look at, find the ending of that story. Think about how you could change the ending. Like, if we go to enrichment every day, what at the end of our days, what if I changed our schedule to where the end of our days didn't have enrichment? What would be something different that would change? How would our day end? So just think about how the ending of a story really aids to the comprehension. So kind of play with that a little bit. Take some books, find that ending, see if you can make up some new endings to the books. And we'll look at this a little bit more tomorrow.